Okay, so it's time to get on with the next session of the day. After spending 18 years on Wall Street, including 10 as a partner at Goldman Sachs, our next storymaker took the decision to set out on his own and start a business dedicated to transforming the way we live and work. Paul Scialla is the CEO of Delos, a company dedicated to creating schools, homes, offices, and other indoor environments that actively contribute to human health, well-being, and performance. So today, Paul's going to be talking to us about the potential that lies within our environments to increase our energy, our efficiency, and our productivity. Here's a short video introducing Paul. Please give a warm welcome to Paul Scialla.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Honored to be here. I see some friends in the audience. Well, I'm here today to speak of well building. I'm sure we've all heard about green building, and we felt it was time to advance that dialogue to also focus on how our buildings, our homes, our offices, our schools are impacting the people inside them. So first off, you may all be wondering, so how does a guy from Wall Street end up creating or putting a team together to create an international standard to focus on human health and well-being in the built environment? During my time at Goldman Sachs, the last 10 years of the Wall Street career, I took note of something around 2006 or 2007, as this word sustainability kept popping up in real estate. Green building made perfect sense. Obviously, this focus on energy usage and water consumption and environmental impact. But I thought there was a gap there. I thought there was a miss, if you will. We all spend 90% of our time indoors. And with all this focus on green building and this notion of environmental sustainability, I asked myself a question, not knowing much at the time. Well, what about all the people inside these buildings? Can we actually also focus on human or biological sustainability? It's not natural to spend this much time inside, these four walls and a roof, whether it's our homes or our offices or our schools or hotels. And I got very interested in understanding what the built environment was actually doing to us. This room, right now, is having an impact on your cardiovascular health, your respiratory health, your immune health. This room is having an impact on the way you're going to sleep tonight. So we embarked on a journey initially to get doctors and architects in the same room. And I was quite fascinated to realize that while architects and designers are designing for the human condition, they never really had a conversation with the medical community. And so putting a small group of folks together initially and asking a question really sparked what we feel is going to be a very large movement and can have a huge impact on society. It also has some staggering economic prospects as well. So the question was this: doctors, architects, if you had to dream it up, what types of things could we do to introduce preventative medical intentions into the way we design spaces, whether that be existing spaces or new buildings? I'm hearing some music. Is that coming? Are you guys hearing that, or is that coming out of here? Okay. So doctors and architects got together, and beyond the obvious, air quality and water quality, we really started to look at many, many different things. And I'm going to get into some of these categories today, and I think you all will be fascinated at minor adjustments that you can all do to your offices, to your homes, can have a huge impact on on us, on our health, our well-being, and our productivity. So, unlocking human potential through your building. Again, when you think of everything that we've heard to date with regards to sustainability, it really has been a green effort, and I would say 80 to 90% of that conversation has been focused on how do we reduce the impact of the environment around us, how does the building become more energy efficient. There have been inklings of conversations with regards to indoor air quality and certain things that impact people, but well building is advancing this considerably. I'm going to put my Wall Street hat back on for a second. You know, as I started to put a team together, formulating doctors to communicate from the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, Harvard and Columbia Medical School, as we started to bring in experts across policy and sustainability, we all recognized that we could have a big impact on, from a social standpoint, if you could actually address human health in a passive manner in all these spaces. But again, thinking with a Wall Street lens for a second, I also was really interested in this notion of taking the largest asset class in the world, real estate, $180 trillion, okay, largest asset class by far, and infusing it with the fastest growing and arguably most important industry in the world, health and well-being. $3 trillion a year annual spend. So you take the largest asset class there is and you merge it with the fastest growing industry, and you got this notion of wellness real estate. Economically, this is really interesting, particularly if you look at the cost of any building. The green building movement today is about a $4 to $5 trillion industry, and it's been focused on reducing the cost, the ongoing energy costs, waste management, water consumption of a building, which happens to be very low single-digit cost of a building, 5% or less, 2%, and that has spawned a $5 trillion industry. Now, the biggest cost of any building are the people inside of it. Over 90% of the cost of any building is its people, salaries, wages, benefits, productivity, output. So if green building over the last 15 years can become a $4 to $5 trillion industry, trying to reduce that cost input of something that amounts to 2 to 3% of a building, I don't know what that means for well building, but it's something that's gigantic, and it's something that needs a lot of attention. And what we started with early on was a platform to collaborate and to bring the industry together and formulate this process called WELL certification. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the U.S. Green Building Council and other GBCs around the world, and programs like LEED certification, L-E-E-D. You may see that on the sides of buildings. LEED, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And the U.S. Green Building Council has put that certification program into about 14 billion square feet around the world in 156 countries in the last 14 years. We have created what's called the International Well Building Institute, again, a collaborative platform that aligns with green building practices and is complementary to. And that's the process that I'll describe, which I think you'll all find quite interesting as you occupy your homes, your offices, your hotels, that is called WELL certification. So WELL is for people, much like green or LEED is for the environment. In about 2012, late 2012, former President Bill Clinton introduced on our behalf the WELL building standard at the Clinton Global Initiative, introduced the commitment to action at CGI, where we began a pilot process. And this was basically a method to open this up to industry, medical professionals, sustainability professionals, design community, and really understand, again, how we can best address what's happening to us in any type of space, in any type of indoor environment. And hence the WELL building standard was launched. I'm going to get into a few of the categories, and and I think you'll find it quite interesting that we have looked to bring forth building science with medical science. And I got to tell you, going through the process myself, and having such great collaborators and minds around, some of these things are so intuitive and yet forgotten. Some of these are such minor adjustments that can have a huge impact on our health and well-being. When you think of the various health domains listed in a slide like this, as I mentioned, what's happening to you right now in this room, what's happening to you in your home at night, what's happening to you in the 10 hours you spend at the office is having a very large impact on your health. And again, to date, our feeling was there wasn't enough focused on that. So I'm going to give you some examples and get you to get familiar with where this program is and how it could be very relevant to corporations, corporate offices, and to folks in their daily lives. There are 7 concepts to the WELL standard. Some of these are very intuitive: air quality, water, nourishment, light, fitness, comfort, and mind. And I think you'll enjoy understanding how a building's design or operations can actually impact some of these categories in ways that haven't been discovered previously. So what I'd like to do is skip the obvious ones. I mean, look, air quality is clear, right? We all know that we've got issues with regards to pollution. You know, in about 70% of the square footage in the world, indoor air quality is worse than outdoor air quality. And that's pretty scary when you think of how polluted some of these cities and environments are. The fact that air internally doesn't circulate and becomes stagnant is even more concerning. And to get into some real science here, there's about 26 different inputs in the category of air with regards to the WELL standard. Things like PM 2.5 or the size of the particles that are in the air and what's a level that is not optimal for the human lung. Other toxins and pollutants that furniture may give off, what have you. But you know, this is one of the base elements of the standard. You know, you can have the best water quality or the best lighting or the best day lighting in a building, but if its air quality is not well, you've got a sick building. And given again that we're spending most of our time inside 4 walls and a roof, this needs a lot of attention and focus. Now the great news is technology today, there are wonderful ways to clean, purify air. And the intention here of the WELL standard is to formalize a process to validate this. This standard is an output and performance-based standard, which I'll get into from a methodology standpoint. So, you know, again, water is very intuitive, right? Now, this is not about water usage, much in the way green building is focused on how many gallons a building is consuming, how much waste. You think of gray water systems and the ability to recycle water. The WELL building standard with regards to water focuses on the water quality that people are ingesting. When you think of the issues we all have around the world with regards to the downstream issues, you know, there are toxins in our water that we're can't even pronounce. And the standard looks into this and identifies, again, ways to purify and most importantly, measure and track the quality of water in buildings. Nourishment. So you may be thinking, okay, well, how does a building design impact what people intake, the nourishment component? And this is really interesting because there are simple things to do, even through design, to encourage better nourishment. Let's start with water, for instance. It's important to hydrate. In the WELL building standard, very simple, within X number of linear feet on any workstation in a corporate office, you need to have a visible access to water. If people see water, they will drink water. I don't know how often You can bring to your mind, well, there's a water cooler around the corner, and if I'm there maybe once a day and I see it, oh, I'm going to grab a cup and I'll drink some water. It's not that difficult to design to make sure that there are hydrating stations that are visible and encouraging people and reminding people that it's important to take in water. This is costless, okay? The well standard, by the way, and I'll get into some really exciting facts, is showing to be costing about a 1% premium to normal construction practices. This is not something that's a luxury. This is not something that's positioned 10, 15% more expensive than normal building, much in the way green building is. What you'll find, again, a lot of this is some really intuitive input and ways to regulate things like that. Nourishment also, another interesting fact, when you look at cafeterias. If you look at the size of our dishes, our plates, from 1950 until today, you will see that they have doubled the average size. This is according to Dr. Roizen, who's Chief Wellness Officer at the Cleveland Clinic. Now, portion control and overeating is the biggest cause and reason for type 2 diabetes and obesity. And people tend to have bigger plates. They tend to fill those plates up. There are regulations in the Wells Building Standard with regards to operational protocols on cafeterias in schools and in offices, mandating a certain size of plate that is conducive to the appropriate amount of eating healthy portions. Again, a design element to a degree, not something that's costing any extra money. It's more putting the right appropriate measures in. Some of the fascinating conversations we've had also with regards to how design can impact eating. If you've got a line of people putting food on their plates and walking down, what a lot of folks are starting to do is stack the early parts of that line with the healthier foods and put the snacks at the end. And by the time you get to the junk, okay, your plate is full, or you've got a little bit of room left to it. So it's interesting. Design can actually encourage, passively, better behavior with regards to health. Light. So this is a fascinating category, and probably something that the entire industry has just started to become aware of. Okay, so thousands of years ago, before we started building these boxes around ourselves and spending 90% of our time inside, we would all be outdoors, connected to nature, connected to air without chemicals and toxins, and connected to the natural sun pattern. And the sun would rise in the morning, and it would cross the sky, and it would set. And we were, for the most part, energized and productive during the day, and at rest at night. Only 12 years ago, doctors discovered something in our eye called the circadian optic nerve. And it was the first time that medical science realized that our eyes are more than just for vision. They're more than just for seeing things. There's a nerve in the eye which has nothing to do with optics. And that nerve takes in light and light patterns. And that circadian optic nerve regulates our entire 24-hour sleep-wake cycle, our natural circadian rhythm. Depending on the type of light is entering that nerve, it's telling the body and regulating when to produce and suppress hormones necessary for sleep, like melatonin, hormones that can be more conducive to energy, productivity, and output, cortisol, what have you. So we started to study this and said, this is interesting because if the human being was meant to be awake and collect this type of light and different light patterns during the day, that bright, whitish, bluish sky, as that sun would cross, it would turn to a more amber type of light and then ultimately set and dark and be dark. And just that pattern, and only that pattern, was telling our body, okay, it's time to be productive and energized. You need hormones for mental acuity. You need hormones for energy because of that sky, that sun, that light that was entering our eye. And then as the sun would set and you'd get that amber, softer hue, the body would start creating melatonin. And as you'd get to ultimate darkness, melatonin would kick, and cortisol would be suppressed, and you would be creating the things you need for very healthy, deep sleep. That's natural. What's unnatural is artificial light. You know, for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, the human condition and the human body had its relationship with nature until we started to become creatures of the indoors, and more particularly, creatures of artificial light. We have all been walking around for the last, let's say, 100 years in a constant state of twilight since the invention of artificial light. We're getting way too little light during the day. We're inside. We're not exposed to a very bright sky. This is telling our body something, okay? And we're getting way too much exposure to light at night. Any light at night is unnatural. And this has thrown our circadian rhythm completely out of balance. Now, if you dissect, for instance, artificial light into a spectrum, on one end of an LED spectrum, you've got a very high lux, blue, bright, whitish light. And on the other end, you've got a lower lux, yellow, softer type of light. This kind of mimics something, right? The sun pattern. And we started working extensively with the medical community to really understand artificial light and its impact on our sleep-wake cycle. And we were fascinated and very excited and encouraged to understand that we can have a meaningful impact on our own productivity and our own sleeping patterns with the appropriate amount of exposure to the appropriate types of light. So if you are getting exposure to bluer, brighter, whitish light in the evening, it's absolutely terrible for you. It's tricking your body into thinking it's still late morning, midday. It's mimicking that bright sky that you would get. Your cortisol is way up. Your melatonin is suppressed. You're not preparing for sleep. You will not fall asleep when you want to, and more importantly, when you do finally fall asleep, it's not going to be deep sleep. You don't have the amount of hormone production you're supposed to rest. And it's because of the type of light that's entering your circadian optic nerve. Conversely, yellow, softer hue lighting, lower lux, is better for digestion and much more conducive to healthier sleep preparation. This is really interesting. So you mean to tell me, as I was thinking at the time, the type of light that I have around the dinner table can really enhance the way I digest my food? Pretty cool. Passive way of introducing, again, preventative or healthy medical intentions through the built environment. So the well-building standard pays attention to things like this. And again, if you think for the last 100 years, none of us, because of this artificial lighting, okay, none of us is as productive and energized as we're supposed to be during the day. And none of us are sleeping as deeply as we should at night. And circadian lighting, which effectively is a more intelligent, not a more costly decision across the spectrum of light, way to reset us back to the way we were built and the way we were meant to spend our day. We are not supposed to be inside this room right now. You're not supposed to be inside a classroom 10 hours a day, an office 10 hours a day. Now, obviously, that's not going to change, but what we can do is start to understand and bring back in natural sun patterns to the indoors, and it's a fascinating category of the standard. Corporations are loving this. When you think of productivity of an office space, particularly think about the winter months, even at northern latitudes, okay? So the sun is setting earlier, and your workforce is coming back at, let's say, 1 o'clock, 1:30 from lunch. They're already a little bit sluggish as is, and meanwhile, the lighting from outside, the sun is starting to go down very early. Sun sets 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon in some of the northern cities. That is triggering melatonin production for the employees. Okay, they're starting to prepare for sleep, believe it or not, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, it takes a while, but cortisol's dropping, all these hormones that are essential for mental acuity, the ability to retain information and knowledge, the ability to produce, the physical feeling of being alert and awake. That's starting to go away. Now, we can look at those 4 winter months, and you could literally extend the workday in a very healthy manner by hitting the workforce with the appropriate circadian lighting, a higher lux, bluer light. It's going to keep that melatonin suppressed until they leave the office. Now, there's no suggestion here that you should be hitting your workforce at 11 o'clock at night with this type of lighting, but you can understand the balance. And it's this awareness now that architects and designers and contractors and builders finally have to the medical IQ that had never really been infused into this conversation of building, and it has such a huge impact and a big impact to the bottom line and also on lifestyle. I could tell you, even in my home, as I started to put some of these features in my house in New York City, one of my favorite features is in the morning. So, when you sleep, you should sleep in complete darkness. That's the right way to sleep. That's the natural way the human body used to rest and sleep. Blackout shades if you can, or something. But the darker it is, the more melatonin you're producing. You're getting wonderful, restful sleep. The issue is when you wake up in the morning, you are very melatonin rich, and it takes a little while to get going. Now, there's an easy way to counter this. For instance, in my bathroom, very cost effective, just a simple strip of very high lux blue light that I pop on in the morning. While I'm brushing my teeth, 2 minutes of peripheral exposure to that lux and that temperature is stripping all lingering traces of melatonin from my body, boosting hormones for productivity and energy. It's like 4 cups of coffee. Light is medicine. And when you think of what's happening to all of us, we're indoors. We've got polluted air, it's making us sluggish. We've got bad lighting, it's putting us to sleep. And so what do? In the afternoon, we overcompensate. We go get a donut or a cup of coffee. We take sugar in. We take caffeine in. This is all because of how we're feeling, and it actually is because of the inappropriate built environment. And if we can actually reset what the built environment means, we can eliminate these needs and these cravings to overcompensate for things like sugar and caffeine because of that boost we need. So, think of light as medicine. And think of lighting as a very cost-effective way, just because you're making lighting decisions as is when you're building a home or a school or an office. And LED lighting, you can choose any lux, any temperature for the same price. Technology is there. So this is a wonderful category. It's something we feel is going to have a huge impact. If you went to the World Light Fair conference 3 years ago in Las Vegas, and you stood in the middle of the room and yelled out circadian lighting, again, referencing your circadian rhythm, no one would understand or know what you're talking about. Light Fair this year, circadian appropriate lighting is the only thing anyone wants to talk about. So this is a fascinating revolution here, and it's something that is encompassed in the well-building standard. Fitness, okay, some intuitive things when you think about access to fitness facilities, but also getting into elements of active design. I'm not sure you're familiar with the Active Design Initiative. If you place staircases in inviting locations and you make them beautiful, and you have them next to windows instead of in stairwells, or you have art, if you have people, give people a reason to want to go and take the stairs, you can encourage different types of behavior. So really interesting ways to incorporate what we call active design into spaces. Comfort. So this category is interesting, and I want to hit on 2 things: acoustic comfort and thermal comfort. I believe one of the leading causes of stress is a subconscious input of how much background noise you're getting. And I could tell you this morning I woke up on the 26th floor of a hotel room, and the honking outside was excessive because it was obviously traffic, it was rush hour. And it was a great example because subconsciously I was worked up, and it was because of the noise. Now, I'm not just talking about street noise and honking, but there hasn't been that much focus in commercial office design, in hotel design, on very effective and cheap ways to eliminate background noise, even in schools. When you think of kids running through the hallways versus what that's doing to disrupt classrooms. Not expensive, but very important to pay attention to, and it's a very big cause of stress. It's a very big stress indicator. Thermal comfort. The female body versus the male body are set differently. I believe it's a natural difference of about 6 degrees in terms of what's comfortable for a male versus what it is for a female. Yet building code is set to the male condition. So I don't know if any of you have experienced, women have experienced feeling a little bit colder than males in an office environment. And this ability to have dynamic adjustment of temperature as opposed to one output is again, the technology's there, and we need to start to pay attention to thermal comfort because, again, that's having a big impact subconsciously on stress, on performance, what have you. This is an interesting study that came out with regards to sitting, as I watch you all sit. Sitting's not healthy. It's bad for our circulation, it's bad for our posture, it's bad for our digestive tract. Sitting is not a natural condition of the human body. And what do we mostly do 8 to 10 hours a day, if not more? We sit. And what do we do at night? We sit. And one recent study suggested if you took the time to stand up once an hour for 2 minutes, it could extend your life by 6 years. Now, I don't know if that's true. Candidly, I don't care. If it's even partially true, I'm going to try to remind myself to stand up. Sit-stand desks are becoming really popular. It's not a fad. The more we can get people to work standing up, the healthier we're all going to be, the more productive we're going to be. So, there's some really interesting things with regards to ergonomics and furniture design, but then also reminders. We can have everything under the sun from a digital standpoint on our laptops. Why is it not mandatory that there's some program there that just basically pops up once an hour and says, hey, dummy, stand up 2 minutes, then sit back down, if that can have that much of an impact. So again, certain ways to really think about offices, even homes and schools, and programming from an operational standpoint and a structural standpoint through the lens of people. I'm sure everyone in this room has heard about green building. I would hope that in 10 years, we're not going to hear the words green building anymore. It's just going to be the normal way to build. I think 35% of everything that gets built right now in the developed countries in the world have a green equivalency, and that is rising by the day, and the cost of 15 to 20% premiums have come way down. If you do it right, it's very low single-digit premium to build green, and they're exhibiting 6.5 year break-evens on energy. The green building movement is here to stay, and it's going to become normal. And hopefully in a decade, that's just responsible building practice. In cities in the United States like Los Angeles, you can't even build a structure unless it's a LEED silver baseline. So hopefully in 10 years, we don't hear the word green building, the words green building. We think well building is that next conversation. And when you think of green building, I kind of compare it to, hopefully, the color TV. When the color TV came out, for the first year, it was called a color TV. Then it was just a TV. And hopefully the way we build our structures and renovate our structures going forward, they're going to incorporate green responsible practices because they make economic sense to do so, not because we're trying to rally a bunch of tree huggers to save the planet. That's where green building is. That's where green building is headed. We think this entire sustainability conversation, this $4 or $5 trillion industry, by the way, okay, is going to shift to focus now on biological sustainability and well building. And it's going to get exciting to see the impact that we can have. The mind category, by the way, has to really do with awareness and education. When we completed, when CBRE, which is a commercial real estate giant, became the world's first well-certified office in downtown Los Angeles, okay, achieving the 102 inputs. And I got a phone call from their CEO about a month after the space was occupied, and what he said to me really got me excited. He said, Paul, the response has been amazing. The cost was what amounted to be $140,000 more on a $10 million tenant improvement build-out, okay, a 1.4% premium, and when you amortize that over the course of, you look at our employee base moving in, it amounts to about $100 per employee per year. To have 102 inputs passively delivering preventative medical intentions, working on health, well-being, and performance of the employees. The economics are just, they're obvious. But what's really cool is what he said to me was, I didn't get one thing, how addictive health and wellness is. He said, I find myself coming to work in the hallways, elevator shaft, riding up to the office, what have you, and I'm hearing side conversations of my employees and the conversations they're having about how they're changing their behavioral patterns at home because of what they're learning about from their well-certified office. That's impactful. And think about as we start to do this to schools and hitting the younger generation and the impact we can have on behavior, but doing so in a passive sense. I'm very proud to say one of our first projects, or our first project here in Mexico City, will be the Thomas Jefferson Institute School, working with the Carvajal family and the Reese organization. And I'm going to get into some metrics and get you guys to understand where well-building is headed. But think of schools, think of where we're sending our kids, 8 to 10 hours a day, and think about the air that they're breathing and the water that they're drinking, and think about the lighting that they're getting. If we can enhance their ability to retain information at what amounts to be less than 1% premium to normal construction costs in the early projects here, this gets exciting. And hopefully we'll get to the point where well-building becomes normal. So this is actually outdated. We're now over 200 projects at the International Well-Building Institute, which is this public benefit corporation, the governing body of the well-building standard in 12 countries. That 17 million square foot number is now approaching 50 million square feet. This is literally after a public launch 1 year ago, yesterday, at Greenbuild, October 20th in New Orleans, where the well-building standard was made public after that pilot period. Now, back to the Wall Street days. As I was contemplating leaving a perfectly fine thing at Goldman Sachs, partnership in my mid to late 30s, running a group of 60 traders, I couldn't get this itch out of my head, and I spent about 4 to 5 years making sure, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not an architect, okay, not an engineer, but I knew I had the resources to assemble thought leadership. And that 5-year effort of getting this notion vetted academically, medically, politically, was all ultimately meant to take this notion of a well-building standard and put it in the public domain for free. This body of work is public knowledge. Our concern early on was, when we had a little less of an idea of the cost, was, okay, if we succeed, is health and wellness in the built environment, is that a luxury? Should this be positioned for the 1%, for the rich? That's a problem. Health and wellness in our buildings should be positioned as a right, not a privilege. Just like policymakers mandate safety standards, they're supposed to be mandating health standards. And we feel that well-building standard is going to help us get there. Any one of you in this room could take that entire body of work home with you and read it. And what I often tell people is, forget real estate for a second. It's a pretty cool 200-page document that identifies how any spatial environment impacts the human condition. Or better said, how the 15 cubic feet around you are impacting you. Everyone should want to know this. And that's why this is out there for free public download, and it's out there to be accessed by corporations and developers and architects. We are accrediting the industry. After this month in December, there will be over 1,000 well-accredited professionals, just like there are LEED APs, LEED accredited professionals. Architects, engineers, building practitioners, what have you. And our hope here is that this well standard will become normal, and that just like you look or notice a LEED or a green seal on the door of a corporate campus or a bank or a school, you're going to start to inquire and hopefully, in fact, demand that the building is also WELL certified. This was CBRE's global headquarters, the first WELL certified offices. They have since toured 11,000 clients through that space. Many of the Fortune 100 and Fortune 500, but many of the Fortune 100 are now looking to WELL certify their corporate offices. This has to do with attracting and retaining talent. You think of the millennial generation growing up, being used to a health and well-being offering in everything that they see. Every consumer product category nowadays has its wellness option. Simple example, water, vitamin water. Well, why not real estate? Why not our largest consumption? Why not what is our largest purchase, our home? Or our largest monthly expense, the apartment that we rent? Or our largest concern, where we send our kids to school? Or for corporations, our largest asset, our people. And so this is really meant to be something that is scalable and usable for all, and we're seeing incredible adoption. That was one great project. This is a building in Australia, which is about to receive a WELL Platinum designation. That'll be the first WELL Platinum building on that continent. This is Macquarie Bank's headquarters. Incidentally, this works for both new builds and existing buildings. We're having great success taking older buildings and converting them to become WELL certified, even in some cases not having to move anyone out. Okay, these adjustments, the operational adjustments are non-intrusive from a structural standpoint. The architectural enhancements, when you think of enhancing the filtration, when you think of even putting the right access to circadian lighting, folks go through lighting upgrades. They swap out lights. We're in a massive secular shift right now in lighting, swapping out from the old light bulbs to LEDs. And as this transfer is happening, one more intelligent decision along that process to pay attention to the circadian component of lighting and not open up your wallet to spend more, but just to swap out lighting so it's more conducive to the knowledge that we now have. That's very exciting. Two of the highest profile office projects in New York City are registered to be WELL certified. This is the first office tower that will go up on Park Avenue from the ground up in the last 50 years, 425 Park. There's also a 2 million square foot tower next to Grand Central, will be WELL certified. This starts to feel like, new product, it's a no-brainer. And this is starting to feel like even with older product and existing buildings, if we can continue to demonstrate this can be done and done in a very cost-effective manner, we hope that all of us, for all of our sake, that this notion of WELL building is going to mean a lot for all of us. Because again, where we're spending our time right now, 90% of it inside for most of us, it's just not how the human body was built. And we need to start to best understand how to adapt our interior spaces to go back to what the human condition was really meant for and all about. You're going to see more and more evidence of healthy building practices and this question, does a healthier building mean more productivity in the corporate environment? We wanted to deconstruct that line of logic. We felt for about 5 to 7 years now, the hot topic is wellness initiatives, wellness programs in corporations. Okay, great, but let's get back to the science. We felt the industry was making this big leap. Do healthier building practices mean more productivity? And our thought was we need to deconstruct that line of logic. Instead of point A to point D, let's break it down. Point A to point B should be the question, do healthier building practices mean healthier spaces? Point B to C is, do healthier spaces mean healthier people? And point C to D, are healthier people more productive people? The WELL standard is independently validated by GBCI, which is an organization inside the U.S. Green Building Council that has done the same independent third-party verification for, again, 14 billion square feet of LEED product. GBCI is now performing the same exact function for WELL certification as they already do for LEED. And the fact that you've got a space that goes through the protocols, but goes through a rigorous audit when construction is done, where it's a group literally comes and puts a stethoscope on your building, tests the air quality, tests the water quality, measures the circadian lux levels, verifies the operational protocols, so it can actually validate from an output and performance basis, not just an input checklist, yes, I did this, that the building is well certified. That answers that first question. Do healthier building practices mean healthier spaces? Not sure. Is a well-certified space a healthier space? Factually, yes, because it's met the minimum precondition set forth by hundreds of industry experts right now at this point through a consensus peer review, defining the parameters and the preconditions required to understand what is optimal for the human lung, what's optimal for our energy levels, what's optimal type of water to intake. So bringing fact to this argument and then doing so in such an economically viable way is highly encouraging. So that's what I have for you. I just wanted to, again, introduce you all to the notion of well building, and hopefully, if nothing else, have a look at that body of work because you're going to learn a lot. And that's what this really is about, upping the IQ of all of us to best understand how what's around us is impacting us and our families. Thank you.